right. Hello and welcome to our virtual youth group for, I guess this would be May 5th that this would have taken place. Let me pull up our slideshow. Cool. Share screen and hit present. Awesome. Hope all you guys' last couple of weeks of school and everything else are going well. It is May 5th, so happy return to the Revenge of the 5th, as students corrected me. Today it's the 6th, so I feel like it could just as well be Return to the 6th or the 6th Awakens. I think that's what it is. But Star Wars days, regardless. A couple announcements. The last two youth groups will be outside in bonfires in the parking lot. If that sweetens the pot for you guys who haven't been present this last year. But ask you guys dress accordingly, pack a chair, etc. Also, next week, I'll need help welcoming the next year's freshmen coming to youth group. We're going to spend some time with them, play some games, do some introductory stuff. So shoot me a message if you are interested in helping out with that. Also, bonfires this summer. We're going to need volunteer hosts. You should be getting an email today or tomorrow. This will happen every other Wednesday throughout the summer from 8 to 10 p.m. We meet in folks' backyards. We play games. We do worship and youth group and talk together. And it's a lot of fun. And it's a great way to still stay connected throughout the summer. And a lot more relaxed, perhaps, than our typical youth groups. I gotta skip through this because we did some worship music this week. But this week we are talking all about call again. There we go. Right, so we're talking about calling once again. I gotta pull up my notes because I need to make sure I know what I'm talking about. Wow. 2 monitors. This is beautiful. Okay. So last week we talked all about call, but I realized, there's a bit more stuff to say about how we are called. We are called in a multitude of different ways as Christians. Quick recap. Call comes from all sorts of places. It could be friends, neighbors, mentors, teachers, siblings, family, workplace, our society, books, any number of places that we can actually receive a call to say, hey, you're needed here. The one place that is really hard to look for in a call is ourselves. We can't really call ourselves. We can feel a sense of internal call, but in the same way that like every time you ask a little kid, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? They might say astronaut, they might say dinosaur, whatever it is, but we know that changes a lot and it's really not steady. And so this is why we actually need to look outside of us for that call. And it's a lot easier to do so. Do we have a sole purpose in life? The answer is no. There's all sorts of things that we could be doing and will be doing. And ultimately our calling won't fulfill us completely. There will be days where we feel down, even though we might have the perfect job that is like just right suited for us. But ultimately, it's just Christ that fulfills us. And we're freed then to do whatever call that we see fit. So tonight we're going to continue to talk about call and talk about the ways that God pulls on us and calls on us to care for others and actually care about different causes, right? So let's think about the news this past week. I asked students, where in this world does your neighbor need help? The news is a great way to find this out. Could be everything from, we've had a number of members at this church that just came down with some pretty nasty illnesses. We in the community, students brought up everything from student Augie, who's a pitcher who had his backpack with his prosthetic arm stolen. Got the backpack back, still hasn't gotten the prosthetic arm. That's a place that needs caring. Other students brought up apparently stuff's happening in Crimea, the Ukraine area, with Russia moving troops around. India is getting hit really, really hard with the second wave of COVID, and they're running out of oxygen tanks, and there's a little bit of panic setting in. in real fear, just as we have felt earlier in this year, as we weren't sure how bad it was going to get with COVID. There are all sorts of places that actually are in need of help and care, and actually are different places that we have callings. So this is our Corinthians verse, 1 Corinthians 10, 23 through 33. I'll read it here. I got to move my thing. So I have the right to do anything you say, but not everything is beneficial. I have the right to do anything, but not everything is constructive. No one should seek their own good, but the good of others. So eat anything that is sold in the meat market without raising questions of conscience, for the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. If an unbeliever invites you to a meal and you want to go, eat whatever is before you without raising questions of conscience. But if someone says to you, this meal has been offered in sacrifice, then do not eat it, both for the sake of the one who told you and for the sake of conscience. I'm referring to the other person's conscience, not yours. For why is my freedom being judged by another's conscience? If I take part in the meal with thankfulness, why am I denounced because something I thank God for? So whether you eat or drink or do whatever you do, do it all for the glory of God. Do not cause anyone to stumble, whether Jews or Greeks or the church of God, even as I try to please everyone in every way. For I'm not seeking my own good, but the good of many, so that many may be saved, they may be saved. So we are freed from the law. The law actually has no more to say to us. We are dead to the law and all of that which it has. But we also can say that not everything is going to be beneficial for you as a person or as a person in a community, right? So it's not going to hurt your standing with God if you smoke. God doesn't think of you, God doesn't love you any less. Your baptismal promise still sticks. However, it'll hurt your lungs. It might mean that your lungs are hurting down the line. Your physical ability to do things is hurt down the line, and then your ability to help your neighbors and be around for those people that care about you might be shorter, right? So this is a issue here in this world, but it's not a salvation issue, right? There are a host of other issues like this in the world. God doesn't think any less of you if you wear a mask or don't wear a mask. But we as a church have said, you know what, we, just to keep everyone safe and make sure everyone feels comfortable worshiping in this place, are going to wear masks while we're gathered together. And that changes over time. And even if you don't think that you want to wear a mask, we as a church are saying, you know what, for right now, just to make sure that this isn't a stumbling block for anyone, or it makes people feel less likely to come into church, we're going to wear masks. Things like that happen all the time. And we have to try to draw this distinction between law, rules, and gospel, which is the forgiveness of sins, and not let one get in the way of the other best that we can. So one of the early issues that the church ran into was that for most of their lives, they couldn't eat certain foods, right? They were Jewish people and they lived by the Jewish laws. So if your entire life you were told, listen, we don't eat pork, shellfish, and a few other foods because they're unclean. But then suddenly Christ is saying you're freed from the law. What do you do? Would you eat the foods that you were always told, don't eat these, they're unclean? Or would you say, you know what, I have always wanted to try bat, right? And how do we figure that out? Well, this is what the problem that the church ran into is, can we eat these foods that we couldn't before? And what about foods that are sacrificed to idols? Because that was a really common practice at the time. You sacrifice food to idol and then you eat it together. And Paul broke it down in these verses. So essentially, you are freed from the law. You don't have to do anything, but you still have to live on this earth with people. And so do what you can that'll help people. So for instance, I personally don't feel the need to be a vegetarian, but if I'm in front of a vegetarian, that doesn't mean I'm going to, bust out some beef jerky and eat it in front of them just to prove a point, right? That doesn't serve any purpose. On that same token, if someone is saying, if you don't only eat vegetables, then you're not a true Christian. Well, then I actually have to eat meat to prove to them Christ has actually freed me from the law. I am doing the right thing isn't what saves me. And let me prove it to you. So we can kind of be butts about things every once in a while too. So continuing on, oh, there we go. We exist in two kingdoms, right? Think of it this way. You, when you are baptized, are made entirely new. The old is drowned and the new is here. The new is actually existing now. It exists in the God's kingdom that will reign forever. But for a time being, that old you, the old Adam, as they like to call it, still hangs around like this sort of like stinking corpse hanging around your neck sometimes. This is why, and this is that struggle we have constantly, where we want to do good, but we don't. We sin. The old sinner still hangs on. And so for the time being, we exist in two kingdoms, right? There's God's kingdom, which is here. You are forgiven. Your sins are entirely forgiven. You are a new creation. You are God's heir. And we also exist in the state and church. We exist in this place until Christ comes again and brings completely into fruition the new creation, right? And so God actually doesn't want us to become monks and go off and like isolate from everybody and try to do our best to only live in one of those two. Instead, we're called to participate in politics, which means poly, meaning many, and ticks, which either means people or blood-sucking insects. Either way, we are called to be a part of these big groups of people, whether that is a local government, could be having to deal with politics, could just be having to deal with the group of people that are around you. God says, do it. Still be a part of that. So we can't abandon what's going on here either. Part of our caring for our neighbor involves doing things like being part of our neighbors' neighborhoods and countries, doing things like voting. However, politics is not our righteousness. Doing things right, again, is not our salvation. We can say that, but then we kind of forget about it a lot of the times. And it's gotten really tense lately in America. But know that all of you and your voting and your participating in this old creation, it's your sin. When you vote, you're actually going to be killing someone. And if you don't vote, well, then you're just ignoring the problems altogether, and it's still your sin, right? We can't actually abstain and do it the right way. No matter which party gets elected, somebody's going to be suffering and dying, most likely. That is a sad fact of our reality. So let's think about this for a second. I used to have to do debate, and you guys take debate. I have to do this thing, a public forum, where you create an argument on both sides of the coin. They flip a coin, and you have to argue really profusely for your side. I think this is a helpful thing to think about when you're starting to argue about the issues. So your conscience might say, we need to do a better job of caring for this planet. Because if sea levels rise, then there's a lot of countries that are poorer, or they have cities on the coast that will potentially be flooded. We won't have those places anymore. People will be displaced. And we got to care for our environment so that we have it for the next generation to enjoy the beauty that God's given us. Cool. That's an argument that some people make. I think it's helpful for you also to understand that maybe the people that disagree with you aren't doing so because, aren't doing so because they don't care about people, but because they see that some of these practices that we do that maybe you feel need to be done also hurt other people. You know, it's harder to farm, it's harder to make a profit in some places of the world. Brazil recently came out and they said, you know what, everybody wants us to be the world's lungs. When the rest of these developed countries chop down all their massive forests to make way for industrialization, making their countries really wealthy. We're trying to do the same thing, and now everyone's telling us we can't. So either you guys are going to pay us to be the world's lungs, or we're going to have to start clear-cutting rainforests. This is hard. There's no easy way around this, because on the one hand, you have starving farmers who are just trying to make their ends meet. And on the other hand, you have environmentalists who are trying to do a right thing too. Nobody's righteous in all of this. Instead, what we can say is care for your neighbor. do what you can, and actually know that it will be your sin. And so, as Luther said, sin boldly. And then we have to go and ask God for forgiveness for putting our identity in these things, for caring really heavily about these things, and for getting tired, because it is exhausting caring about something. You are going to need forgiveness for existing in the second kingdom. But that's why God gathered us together as a church. So in the sort of homework for this week, the question answers, I want you guys to jot down, we're going to be jotting down some stuff about what are some causes that you care about? What is tugging on your heart to say, you know what, this is what this is how I feel called right now. Like every other call, it's going to shift over time, right? So in my life, I've cared a lot about, at different times, helping with homeless ministry, helping with refugees, helping with, obviously I care a little bit about youth, otherwise I wouldn't be a youth minister. But these are all different causes that I care about. So what are some causes that you care about? Knowing that this too will change as people say and come up and say, you know what, I need this, or this is a big problem that we're facing right now. So yeah, send that homework in. Per usual, I think you're sending it to Lars, I think. And we'll take a look at that. But I hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and see you soon.